right. Can everybody see the virtual experience center?
Yes, I can.
Beautiful. All right, so yeah, let's get into it. So obviously my name's Brandon Wilson. I am the local Hanwha regional sales manager here in Ohio. So my territory is really Columbus and south. So I go down to the river in Cincinnati, but we have representation across the entire United States. So if you happen to be outside of my territory, we can absolutely get Hanwha representation involved to assist you and IPS in hooking you up with the products that you need. So nonetheless, let's get on into it. So Hanwha, if you're not familiar, I'll just kind of give you a quick overview of who Hanwha is, because in most cases, it's the largest company that you've never heard of. A lot of times, it's a company that doesn't really touch the consumer level as far as products go. So most of what we do is on the business to business level, and for that reason, we're sort of a dark horse in a lot of people's eyes. But nonetheless, we're still a massive company. We're based out of South Korea. That's our global headquarters. But we are a global Fortune 500 company, so we are a massive company. We started out as a defense contractor, so making things like tanks, missiles, howitzers, all this military level equipment, and we're still doing that today, not only for South Korea, but all their allies as well, United States being one of them. In fact, the U.S. Army uses a lot of the Hanwha tanks. So we're still heavy into the defense contractor side, but you can see on the video here, we touch all kinds of different sectors. We are in chemicals, aerospace, aviation. We're actually the world's largest solar panel manufacturer. So you name an industry, we probably touch it in some way. Obviously, what we're concerned about today is video surveillance. So the video side of our company is called Hanwha TechWin. If you've been following along in the video industry for several years now, you may have heard of Samsung TechWin. Obviously, everyone's heard the name Samsung before. You might have a Samsung phone in your pocket, or a refrigerator at home, or a TV hanging on your wall. Samsung used to be in the video surveillance market, and so that was our company. It was Samsung TechWin for about 25 years or so. And then Samsung decided they wanted to get out of the business to business sectors that they were in. And so they decided to sell off the video surveillance side, and Hanwha, being another South Korean company, just like Samsung, felt that it fit their defense portfolio very well and purchased the TechWin company. So that being said, we've been around for over 31 years now, probably about 32 years at this point, doing video surveillance equipment. So one of the nice things about that, when Hanwha took over the video surveillance side from Samsung, so we actually took all manufacturing out of China, and now we're doing it in South Korea and Vietnam, and actually have another slide here coming up that gets a little bit more into what we're doing on the manufacturing side and what the benefits are there. But Hanwha's invested a lot of R&D. We've actually taken our market share from 7th in the United States when we were Samsung TechWin to number 2 in the US now as Hanwha TechWin, and we're continuously growing every single year, gaining more and more market share. You may have seen the branding WiseNet. In fact, if you look up at cameras and a lot of facilities that you run into, you probably see that WiseNet name on the camera. That is actually a Hanwha camera. So believe it or not, we don't use the Hanwha name on our camera. We use the WiseNet name. So WiseNet's just our branding. It's on our cameras, on our recording platforms. You'll see that word come up a lot. This slide sort of talks about the progression of our chipset over the years. So we're actually developing and manufacturing our chips ourselves that are going into the cameras. Started out with WiseNet, now we're all the way up to WiseNet 7, and we just keep adding and developing this chip adding new features to it, coming out with new versions, and we'll get into some of the technology here coming up and what the benefits are to that. So the fun stuff, the manufacturing. I mentioned before that we are manufacturing all of our components, all of our cameras in our own factories. So these factories are in South Korea and Vietnam. And we're really kind of creating our entire ecosystem as a Hanwha ecosystem here. So soup to nuts, we're creating these cameras in our own factories. They're Hanwha employees. We're cutting the lens for the glasses. We are not only designing, but manufacturing the chips in our own factories. We're really bringing in raw materials and spitting out cameras. So that makes us different than just about all of our competitors in the sense that we're not doing any contract manufacturing. We aren't relying on third-party chip manufacturer and third-party lens manufacturer to deliver those components to us so that we can assemble them and call ourselves a manufacturer. We are truly making those components ourselves. Another big point here, and I talked earlier about how Hanwha touches all kinds of different sectors. We have all kinds of different businesses. Well, one of them is Hanwha Precision Machinery. So it's a part of Hanwha that actually makes machines. Well, sure enough, the Hanwha made machines are actually making the components that are making the cameras. And to take it a step further, we're powering these factories off of Hanwha solar panels. So I mentioned we're the world's largest solar panel manufacturer as well. So like I said, it's really our entire ecosystem here. And at the end of the day, that allows us to have shorter lead times. Our average lead times on equipment right now is about 3 to 4 weeks. You might see some longer lead times, but worst case scenario, you're looking at about 10 weeks on our cameras versus competitors, which can be 8 to 10 months at this point, sometimes even longer. In South Korea, where our global headquarters is, we also have our Artificial Intelligence Center. So it's an entire building dedicated to developing the latest and greatest AI for our equipment. And I'll get into some of the current AI that we have right now, but it takes an army to develop this. It's high-level analytics that are going into our cameras. We're doing a lot of this intelligence on the edge, taking the processing power away from recorders. And I'll get into what some of those specific analytics are here in a little bit. Another big piece of what we're doing is quality assurance. So I already talked about how we're making these cameras, we're making this equipment soup to nuts in our own factories, which already allows us to have a high level of quality assurance because we're watching every single component get made in this equipment. We're not we don't need to check on our contractors to make sure they're making the chips properly, not doing anything that we wouldn't agree with on that level. We're doing everything ourselves. But that being said, we also test the equipment after it's created. So this video just kind of goes over some of the different tests that we're doing. So we're doing things like, of course, the distribution environment test. So here we're sort of mimicking a rough truck ride, right, or a rough airplane ride or boat ride, right, making sure that equipment's not going to get damaged in transit. But we're also testing the power, things like surge protection, and everything that goes into that. Also, we're testing abrasion. We're doing water tests. So we're really trying to make sure this camera is going to survive in any environment that you put it in, right? As long as you're putting it in an environment that the camera's rated for. All right. So that's a quick overview of manufacturing, who Hanwha is. And so hopefully you learned a little bit there, but let's get into the fun stuff. We'll talk about cameras. At the end of the day, we are an optics company. We put a lot of effort into creating pretty pictures, right? So here's our camera portfolio, and I'll start at the bottom. We'll work our way up. because as we work up, the price gets a little bit more expensive. So these are more of our low cost cameras at the bottom, getting to more of our higher end cameras at the top. But starting at the bottom, we have our HD plus cameras. So HD plus is going to be our high def over coax cameras, or in other words, our analog technology. There's a lot of facilities out there that still have analog cameras to this day. And a lot of the old analog technology is less than 1 megapixel. It's very low quality, low resolution technology, but that's all there was before the IP camera was invented. So what we can do if the end user does not have the budget to upgrade that old coax analog infrastructure, we can leave it in place, and now we can get them high definition over that coax. So we can do 2 megapixels or 4 megapixel cameras over coax. We would just have to replace the camera and the head end to do so. Now, that's not a technology that gets used often because we still to this day will recommend upgrading that infrastructure to IP, just because that's where the industry is moving. You get a lot more benefits out of an IP camera than you would out of a analog camera. So everything else you see here is all going to be IP cameras, starting with our A series. So this is something we just released a couple months ago. And honestly, it is our low cost lineup. So we're going to have great quality cameras. They're 2 megapixels or 4 megapixels, but we strip a lot of the features and functions out of them to keep them at a low cost and affordable cost, right? So this is our lineup that we're going to use if we get into those situations where the budget is very small, but we still want to use a quality piece of equipment, because the last thing we want you to do is to go to Sam's Club or Costco or Best Buy to pick up video surveillance equipment there, because at the end of the day, you're probably not going to be super impressed with the quality of equipment you get from any big box retailer. Q series is really where we're starting to get into our good bang for your buck cameras, and this is where I'll start to talk about features and functions in the camera. But here we have 2 megapixel, 4 megapixel, and 5 megapixel options. So if I click on this, you can see we have several different form factors. So starting with the indoor domes, you can see we have the mini domes, which are great. They're small, about the size of a hockey puck, so super compact. They look great aesthetically. Then we have the standard indoor domes as well, but getting into the Vandal domes, these are great outdoor rated cameras. They're Vandal proof, so that in those instances where somebody might try to break the camera, they're going to withstand that type of force a lot better than our non-Vandal cameras would. Of course, we have the bullets, we have the flat eyes, just different type of form factors here. We even have some lower cost fisheyes, and I can get into what a fisheye looks like if you're not familiar here in a little bit. And then, of course, your pan, tilt, zoom cameras, your PTZs. So these are the cameras that we can actually grab a hold of just from sitting at our computer with a mouse and a cursor. We can go ahead and move those cameras around, tilt them up, tilt them down, zoom them in, zoom them out, follow things that we're interested in. And these are our budget line of PTZ cameras. So some of the features that are in these Q series cameras, we'll go over that in this video here. So I mentioned we can do 2 megapixels, we can do 5 megapixels, we also have 4 as well. And then wide dynamic range. So this is the term that a lot of people aren't necessarily familiar with, but what wide dynamic range truly is when you have those field of views where you have the variance in lighting conditions. So you might have bright light coming through a window and then a dark inside. Or maybe you're in a warehouse application and the camera's in the warehouse, but that bay door opens up and that bright light comes flooding in. Right, this is where we want the camera to make that adjustment so that we can still see in the dark areas and in the bright areas. So WDR, or wide dynamic range, is going to be super important for these applications. And all of our cameras are going to have true WDR, which is 120 decibels. So one thing to look for when you're looking at cameras for these applications is not only the fact that it has WDR, but you want to make sure it's true WDR, which is 120 decibels. So if you're looking at any of our competitors, they might say they have WDR on a camera, but if it's anything less than 120, chances are is it's not going to perform very well. The Q series cameras also perform very well at nighttime. So if there is ambient light out in a parking lot or off the building, or wherever that light might be coming from, chances are the camera can stay in color and give you a nice, crisp, clear color image even at night. But in those instances where you do have a pretty dark scene and there's not a lot of ambient light, the camera will turn into black and white mode. The IR illuminators will turn on and you'll have a crisp, clear black and white image. We also put some basic analytics into the Q series. So defocus detection, if the camera ever gets knocked out of focus, you can create an alarm, get notified there. If the camera is tampered with, so tampering is actually one of the most underutilized analytics in our industry. A lot of cameras have them built in, all of ours do. But basically what the tampering analytics is going to do is it's going to say, okay, if at least 80% of the pixels in this scene change rapidly, the camera's been tampered with. So that could be just simply covering up the lens on the camera. It could be spray painting like you see in the picture here. It could be physically moving the camera. If it's a bullet camera and somebody just moves it to point it in a different direction, that would trip the tampering detection. Or even a lot of times if there's cameras hanging up in the hallway of a school, I've seen this before, and somebody hangs up a banner in that hallway, all of a sudden that banner is covering up the camera. That can trip the tampering detection analytic too. So there's a lot of good uses for this one, and it comes free in the camera, so it's easy to turn on and enable. Motion detection, of course, is just looking for pixel change in the field of view. So we can get analytics or even record on motion. Directional detection, so you can digitally draw a line in the field of view and get notified if an object crosses that line going a certain direction, or in the case of virtual line, just any direction across that line can trip the notification. And then of course your enter and exit. You digitally draw an area. If an object goes into that area, trips the analytic, or if something exits that area, trips the analytic as well. So exit can be nice if you have, let's say, a high dollar piece of art on a wall, right? You can draw a box around it and say, all right, this high dollar piece of art leaves the wall, give me that notification right away. And then there's a couple other features that make it nice for the installers as well, but I'll try to keep this more end user focused today. That's a quick overview of the Q series. So everything you saw there will carry into this every camera that you see in the series above. So it'll at least meet those specs and features, if not better. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And I'll actually skip over T series. I'll go to this one last just because this is our specialty lineup of cameras. So not your everyday cameras, but some of the stuff that you would use in very specific and niche applications. But let's hop into the X series, which is right after the Q. So in our X series, we have the X Plus and then the X Core. X Core being slightly more affordable than the X Plus, but each have a really strong lineup of features and functions built in, and I'll start to get into them here. But we do have 2 megapixel, 4 megapixel, 6 megapixel, and 4K, which is 8 megapixel options in these cameras. We have them in domes, we have them in bullets. Pan tilt zoom cameras once again. So really all those same form factors that you saw previously on the Q series, we have available in the X. But first things first, I wanted to talk about extreme wide dynamic range. So I mentioned WDR when we were talking about the Q series, and I talked about 120 decibels of wide dynamic range being true WDR. Well, if you look up in our X series, we can actually get up to 150 decibels of wide dynamic range, which is what we're calling extreme WDR. So this is the industry best as far as decibel rating goes. And you can see for those very extreme applications, like the bay door opening up, we can have great performance here. So you can see conventional WDR, which is 120 on the left-hand side versus 150 on the right-hand side. And the difference there, the clarity you're going to get on the dark areas and outside in the bright areas. Another thing that's built into the X series is lens distortion control. So a lot of times when you have a wide angle camera, wide angle lens on a camera, the outer parts of the field of view start to get a little bit distorted. It starts to look curved. And a lot of people looking at that don't like it, right? It's not normal to the human eye. It's not real to what the scene's actually going to look like with the human eye. So what we can do is we can turn on LDC and it makes that correction. It straightens everything out for us. We do have some business analytics built into it. So we can do people counting, which is what you're seeing here on the left-hand side. So if you have a code for your building that you can only have a certain amount of people in the building, we can keep count at the camera level and give you multiple ways to monitor that, whether you're just generating a report at the end of the day or giving you real-time statistics so that you can stop people from coming in if you need to. We also have queue management, and this is great for those retail applications. So you can see here on the right-hand side, the camera's smart enough to know what a human is. So of course it's putting the bounding box around each person. It's counting how many people are there. And you can set up the parameters to say, okay, if there's more than 5 people in this line, give me a notification. Because if this is a retail store and I've got that many people in line at the point of sale, I know that as a store manager, I need to go open up another cash register, another point of sale station, because these people are waiting too long in line. Let's see here. I did want to talk about this because this is unique. There's not a lot of manufacturers doing anything similar to this. And this helps with the longevity of our cameras. So we have what we call the Gore vent built into our X series cameras. So this is actually a vent that will not let any water in, but it lets air in and out. So the reason for this is a lot of times on a lower end camera, you're going to have humidity start to build up inside of that camera. And so if it's a dome camera, you might see water on the inside of that dome just from the humidity, the condensation, right? Even on the inside of a bullet camera, you might start to see that. And that can really mess with the image quality. So this is super important to let that vent out of there and keep the inside of the camera dry, but also keep the stress off of the seals of the camera. And a lot of times the seal is what will try to let that air come in and out if you don't have an actual vent on there. So put stress on the seals, and then over time you'll notice water might start actually getting in. So that's why it's super important to go with higher quality cameras and not the super low end stuff. In our X Plus lineup, we do have this modular design, which is really unique. So talking about this real quick, when you get this camera, or when IPS receives this camera to install it for you, they're going to receive it in 2 different boxes. The box is going to have the mounting plate in one, and then the camera module in another. All of the electronics of this camera are built into the actual camera module. So the reason this is beneficial is because when we actually want to install this camera, you're just placing this module inside of the mounting plate. It's a magnet that connects it. But for the sake of future upgrades, we're going to continue coming out with new models in this camera module so that when you do upgrade 3 years from now or 5 years from now, or hey, maybe even next year, what you can do is keep that same mount in place. So without the need to drill any new holes, it's just a matter of popping this camera module out, popping the new one in, and you're good to go. So this is especially helpful in those healthcare applications where if you need to drill holes in a hospital, you're pretty much shutting down that entire hallway to do so, right? Well, with this situation, if you have that special mounting plate where all you're doing is popping off the camera module, popping in a new one, there's no drilling holes. You don't need a HEPA tent, anything like that. So extremely beneficial. And obviously there's a lot of different features and functions built into this X series, and I won't go over every single one of them. But one thing I do want to go over, because this is extremely useful, is the ability to do AI. So in these cameras, we have factory trained them to know what a human looks like and to know what a vehicle looks like. And not only know what a vehicle looks like, but know how to differentiate, and as you can see here, between a bicycle, a car, a motorcycle, a bus, a truck. So we can set up these analytics to give us really accurate notifications. So if we draw an area and we say, all right, let me know when a person enters this area, not a vehicle. I don't care about a vehicle. I just want to know when a person enters this area. We can do that. Or vice versa. We don't care about people walking through. We just want to know when a vehicle walks through, or even just a truck. We don't care about the cars and the bicycles. We just want to know when a truck comes through. So you can do that in these cameras. And we can even do that with the line crossing here, or we can do things like loitering, where that object has to enter that area and stay in that area for a certain amount of time that you decide. You can say 10 minutes. If somebody is in this area for 10 minutes, give me that notification. All right. So that's the high level overview of the X series. Next, we're getting up into the P series, and this is where we get into our higher level of AI. So let's talk about AI. So there's a couple levels here. AI object detection is what I just talked about in the X series, where the camera's factory trained to know what a person is, know what a face is, know what a vehicle is. And you can get those accurate notifications on those objects versus things that are not a person or a vehicle. You can kind of get an idea with this little sample video down here. Camera's putting the bounding box around the people and the faces, but it doesn't care about all the moving objects in the background, the fish, the light refractions, everything that's happening in that busy background. It just doesn't care. But where we take AI to the next level, and what's in our P series, is the ability to do attribute collection. So this makes forensic searching very easy, because in this camera, we're able to say that that's a female. She has a hat on, she has glasses on, the top clothing color is tan, the bottom clothing color is blue. There's a bag present, so she's carrying a bag. So all of these attributes are now searchable within the camera or within the VMS. We also have the ability to give you attributes on the car too. So we can say that it's a yellow bus or a red truck or a blue car. So the camera's smart enough to know not only that it's a car, but all those attributes on it as well. And then same for the human. So just to give you an idea of what that would look like in Wave, which is our VMS, which I'll get into here in a second, you can see they typed in male, they typed in orange, and it gave us all the hits of when it saw male in the color orange. Here they're typing in truck black. You're getting the truck that's black. They click on that, it's pulling up that video clip. So this just makes searching video so much easier. I mean, you can spend hours looking for the black truck if there's hundreds of vehicles driving down this road every day. But if you have the ability to just type in black truck, you can find that in a matter of seconds. This technology is happening at the camera level, so in our P-Series cameras, but it's compatible with several different VMSs. Of course, our own VMS, which is Wave, but also Genetec and Milestone. And there's a couple other VMSs out there that are working on integrating it, and hopefully we'll have that here soon. So getting back into cameras here, the other part of the P-Series is our multi-sensor lineup. So this is extremely beneficial. In our multi-sensors, we have the dual lens camera, we have the tri-lens camera, the 4-lens, the quads, and some other ones as well. But the whole reason behind multi-sensor cameras and why these can be beneficial to you is that there's 2 or more lenses within this single camera, which means there's one cable out to the camera. If you're using a license-based VMS, it's typically one license to use this camera. And then as far as installation goes, it makes it easier because there's only one cable, there's only one time drilling the holes for the mount. So we're able to cut down on labor when we use this type of technology too. So at the end of the day, it can really bring the cost down of the project, but also it can aesthetically look better. So instead of having 3 or 4 cameras up on the side of your building, you can have one with 3 or 4 lenses. So just getting into it, on the dual lens camera, these actually have varifocal lenses, so we can zoom them in, zoom them out to get them set at the proper field of view. We also have IR built in, so at nighttime, if the scene is very dark, we can flip it into black and white mode and still get you a crisp, clear image. So we have a model that's 2 by 2 megapixels and 2 by 6 megapixels. We also have the 3-lens camera. So same idea, but on the 3-lens camera, we can move those lenses around a track in there and point them in whatever direction we want. And this can be great for a 3-way hallway, or even if you want to set up like a 180 off the camera, you can do that as well. In our quad multi-sensors, we have something called PTRZ. And this is unique to the industry, and something that a lot of our customers really like. So when I say PTRZ, it's pan, tilt, rotate, zoom. So all of those functions are available through the camera webpage, just with a couple clicks of the mouse. So really the installer is just going out there and hanging that up on the mount. They're not pointing those lenses physically with their hand like they would any other camera. They're coming back to the head end, and by clicking the mouse, they can get those lenses pointed in whatever direction they want and get the fields of view set perfectly. So obviously this can cut down on the installation time and make that easier, but also think about this for future service calls. So let's say you, the end user, have one of these cameras installed, and it was installed in the winter time, right? Trees weren't bloomed, and the lenses were able to see pretty easily. Well, it's springtime now, 3 months later, and those trees are starting to bloom. It's really starting to block the view of a camera. You call up IPS and say, hey, IPS, I need you to re-aim this camera. So what's IPS going to do? They're going to do a truck roll, right? And they're going to charge you for it. So you're going to go out there. They're going to have a lift. They're going to have a ladder, whatever it takes to get up there on that ladder to repoint that lens, right? Well, we can eliminate all of that by using this camera, because while they're on the phone with you, as long as they have remote access to this, they can say, all right, you want that camera moved? Let me log into it real quick while we're on the phone. Couple clicks, boom, it's adjusted, you're done. So without even rolling a truck, they can make those kinds of adjustments with the PTRZ technology. All right, a couple more I want to talk about. It's the quad plus PTZ. So this actually has 5 lenses built into it. There's 4 fixed lenses around the ring up here, and those can actually be moved around the ring, pointed in whatever direction you want. So if you don't want a full 360 and you'd rather do like a 270 around the corner, you can do that. But there's also a pan tilt zoom camera underneath it, which will allow you to zoom in and get more detail. So we can even do things like setting up analytics, saying, all right, and that's actually what this video is showing, is they drew a box over here. So person entered that box, PTZ went and zoomed in on it. So they're really working in conjunction with each other to sort of automate the PTZ so you don't have to sit there and control it at all times. And lastly, our 180 panoramic camera. So this is also a multi-sensor, but this is the only multi-sensor we have that stitches those lenses together. So there's 4 lenses built into this, but like I said, they're stitched together. So you really get one video stream out of it, which is really nice. So this camera is actually great on the flat side of a building, looking at a big parking lot, right? So you typically need 2, maybe 3 cameras to look at that big parking lot. Well, now we can accomplish it with just one. All right, so that is the multi-sensor lineup. I'll hit on the T series real quick, and then I'll jump into the VMS. So in our T series, like I said before, these are more of our niche products, so not your everyday cameras, but we have explosion-proof cameras for those facilities where we have highly flammable objects or materials. So in the case that there's chemical mixing facility or food processing, things like that, and they require class 1 div 1 housings, that's where the explosion proof would come into place. We have the high level positioning system, pan tilt zoom cameras that can view miles away, essentially, from the top of a roof. We have thermal cameras if you want to get into perimeter protection or doing temperature readings. Anti-ligature is great for corrections facilities or those instances where you need a highly vandal resistant camera to go right up in the corner. We do make mobile cameras for buses and vehicles. An 8K camera, I can get into that real quick. Just show you a quick demo on that. Let's go here. So the 8K camera is really a 33 megapixel camera, so super high resolution. And this is great for ballpark stadiums or really any type of application where you want a super wide field of view looking very far away, and you still want to be able to zoom in and get great detail. So these are just some samples with this camera with a couple different lenses on them. So you're looking at hundreds, if not thousands of seats, and yet you can still blow that image up to get detail on a person sitting in any one of those seats. Back to the T series one last time for the network intercom. So the network intercom has a camera built in. This can actually integrate with any SIP-based call phone system. So if you have one in place, we can integrate that, or IPS can, of course, provide a SIP-based system, but it can also integrate with our VMS. So from your recording platform within the software, you can go ahead and answer those calls, see who's standing there, and even unlock the door with a click of the button. So this is super nice. It's a slim form factor, fits right on a door mullion, has our super extreme wide dynamic range, and it even has touchless calls. So if you want to just wave your hand in front of it instead of physically touching a button, because maybe you're worried about germs, we can go ahead and make it operate that way too. Whoops. Open that back up. And we'll get into the VMS real quick. I know we're getting a little low on time. I wanted to open it up to questions here as well. But on the recording solutions, so what we're typically leading with, if you're looking for a Hanwha solution on the recording side, is what's called WiseNet Wave. And this is our most feature-rich, high-end VMS. And I will preface this by saying we do integrate with a lot of other VMSs as well. In fact, we work very strong with several other VMSs. So if you do have another VMS that you are not looking to switch away from, there's a good chance that we will integrate our cameras very well into them. That's a discussion we can, of course, have offline. But if you're looking for a new VMS, we can, of course, talk about Wave. So this is what I have here to show you. Let's hop into the next slide. Here we go. So Wave is super Nice, because it handles multiple sites and multiple servers very well. We use what's called the Hive architecture. So kind of like a beehive, in the sense that you have multiple recorders. Maybe they're at different sites, maybe they're on the same site. But we bring them together and they're constantly interacting with each other to be a part of one system, right? So from the software, you can have full access to look at your cameras from those multiple sites, to create a single user that has one login to hit all of the sites and all of the cameras. And we can even do things like automatic failover. So if one of the servers goes down for whatever reason, your cameras can automatically fail over to another server so that you don't lose any recording time. And we can, of course, push updates out to all the recorders with one click. And it's really nice because there's no single point of failure here. The way licensing works is that really you just need a license to record each camera, right? So we're not going to charge a license for the software or a license for the server, or a license per user or per client. It's just per camera. So if you have 100 cameras, you're buying 100 camera licenses, and that's it. The nice thing is there's no tiered licenses. So if you're just doing the most basic functions, looking at live view and playback, or if you're doing all the most advanced functions, it's going to be the same license regardless. And we make it affordable. It is just a one-time fee, so there's no software service agreements to it. There's no yearly subscription or anything like that. You buy that license once and it's good for life. You can even transfer that license from camera to camera as you upgrade your cameras in the future. And of course, the other nice piece of this is the cloud management of it through WaveSync. So without the need to do any type of port forwarding or any special networking, we can use WaveSync, which just does all of this for you in the cloud, to give you that remote access, just with a couple clicks of the button. All right, so I know we're at about 10:47 here, so I wanted to open it up for questions. And obviously, this was a high-level overview of everything. So if there's anything you're looking for more detail in or a more deeper dive presentation, we can, of course, set up another call to do just that. If you're looking to see Wave or any specific cameras, I'm always happy to help do that. But I guess at this time we can open it up for questions, and I'm happy to answer anything.
We had one question dropped in the chat earlier, and that is, are there any concerns installing a camera with a gore vent in a high dust environment?
No, not at all. So the gore vent is IP66 or IP67 rated, depending on the model you go with, but that rating there says that no water or dust is going to get into the camera at all. So it's literally just air. It's very, very small area for just air to get through, but no dust, no water, and it's completely rated to make sure that dust won't get in. So yeah, no concerns there.
Awesome. If anybody else has a question, feel free to hop on your mic and ask, or if you want to drop it in the chat, I'll keep an eye on that box and ask it for you.
Hey, Brandon, great stuff. Quick question regarding the X series. You talked about the camera's ability to act as a sensor and detect, say, people versus cars. And we had another call in yesterday from a Ford dealership. We haven't had a chance to really talk to them in much detail, but I'm wondering if we've got another situation where, hey, they're concerned about people coming on the lot at night, right? And maybe doing things they're not supposed to be. So with a camera like that, can that be a function that is set on a timer, right? We don't care if people come on at 5 in the afternoon, but boy, if they're on at midnight, we'd probably like to invite them politely to maybe come back tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of remind people the technology we're discussing here. We're talking about the AI analytics with either a person or a vehicle. But yeah, these can absolutely be scheduled. So if there's only certain hours of the day that you want to run this analytic, you can absolutely set it up that way. Oops.
Are there any other questions or final thoughts from anyone before we close things out? And again, like Brandon said, I know that was a lot of information to go over. So if anyone finds that they need another demonstration or want a one-on-one call, definitely do not hesitate to let myself or your IPS sales rep know, and we will be more than happy to get that scheduled for you and talk you through everything. All right, so if there are no final questions, that is it for us here today. Again, thank you for joining, and I will be following up with all of our attendees with some additional information, as well as get you your thank you gift card. And with that, I wish everyone a good Wednesday. We'll see you later.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for the presentation. Appreciate it.